everyone. Welcome to the Roads Weekly webinar. Today's topic is going to be on animated transitions, which is a feature that has been added to the master branch of Roads. Animated transitions is based off of JQTouch. We took a version of JQTouch and added it to Roads and modified it to work with the existing CSS framework. And so I'm going to demonstrate here how to use this new feature and how to modify an existing application to use this feature as well. So we'll go to a location here, and we've installed the Roads master branch, and we can tell by saying which roads, which roadgen. This gives us a path to our locally installed repository here. This path is where I've checked out and pulled the latest master branch. So we'll roadgen a new application, and we'll just call it test for now. And then in this application, we'll generate a model. And then we'll open up in our favorite editor. In our index.erb, we'll take a look here and put a link to our person controller. So one thing you might notice here is that the changes to the divs. Previously, we had all the divs labeled by ID, and it has been changed to class. And same thing in the toolbar and the main divs. The reason why we've done this is because the way that the JQTouch framework worked was to use the IDs, and it actually would just insert a new div with the content into your application. And so if we were using IDs, you'd end up with ID conflicts as the application would load. If we take a look at our layout.erb, there's a new section here that has been added that loads the jQuery and JQTouch CSS. And there's a new option in rowconfig.txt that is JQTouch mode, which changes the behavior of the default status bar and the behavior on some XML requests, the XML HTTP request. So let's take a look at what this application looks like with the new transition framework. We just do a rake run iPhone. And it's going to go ahead and do a build and launch the simulator. Now we can see that my application is here properly. So from the top here, it looks just like any other old Roads app. You might notice the forward button is missing. There was issues with the forward button, and it was not used very often, so we removed it. But now when you click on links, you'll see you get a sliding transition. And as we create things, you get sliding transitions doing here. So that's how to use the new JQ Touch modifications that we've added to the Rhodes framework. We call it our animated transitions. One thing we're going to take a look at here is if you go to the wiki page, we've added a new section, Rhodes Native User Interface, Animated Transitions. And so there's one way, by default, slide is the transition, and you can add these other transitions, fade, dissolve, flip, and those are the standard transitions that are available. So let's go ahead and take a look at this and change some now. So we'll go to our index page, and for example, we want to change this to a slide. So if we take a look here, you put it on the ARA. So we'll say class equals fade, for example. We'll now go ahead and relaunch our application. Go ahead and select our test app here. Now when we select people, you see it faded to the next one. And if we go back, it fades back. So taking that example, we'll now go ahead and view this in the Android simulator. So I'm going to go to my build YAML, and I'm going to tell Android to use the 2.1 simulator. Save that. Now we'll do rake run Android. This is going to do an Android build. So we're waiting for our emulator to get started still. So it says our application has been started, so let's open this up. We have our loading page here, and so then when we select our people here, you can see that it fades to the next one. If we select new, we can see we have the slide transitions. So that's how it looks on Android. So that's great on how a new application works. What if you want to take an old application and make it work with the new transitions? So the example we're going to do is take our BART app that we started in the last webinar and add transitions to it. So let me exit the Android emulator. We'll go ahead and go back to our BART app, and I have that open here already. The very first thing that we need to do with this is to copy over the JQTouch and the CSS folder. So we'll go to our BART app, and then we're going to copy the folders from the app we just generated into our current app. So we'll say test public CSS into here. Actually, we need to give this the -A option to do the recursive copying. And we also need to copy the JQTouch folder here as well. So now if we look in our public folder, we have our JQTouch folder and the CSS folder that was replaced. Now that we have that, we can go back to our editor here. So the first thing we need to do is to set our row config. We need to add JQTouch mode. Save that. You need to change your layout.erb, and so we have on our wiki page the code that you need to add to your ERB. So if we go back to the wiki, we see there's this block here that says this must be included in the layout's head element. So we can simply copy that code here and go back to our application, go to our layout, and we'll just insert this above some of the stuff we had already done. Save that. The next thing we need to do is change all the IDs to divs. And so in most cases this will work just fine. Since we used IDs for other things in some of the pages in the apps, we're going to need to do some special casing around that. But let's just change the pages here first. So we'll just replace ID equals with class equals, do a replace all, and then we'll verify that things are correct. For example, this one has two classes, and so we need to replace that with a space instead of having 2 elements. So we'll go ahead and fix that up here. Another thing we did is we had some IDs for doing some JavaScript replacements, so we'll fix those here. We just have to remember that when we're using the animations, all of it get loaded into the same actual page in the DOM. So if you have IDs that match, you'll run into ID conflicts. So let me take a look here and verify there's no more conflicts here. We're remembering we're using ID here. So now we'll go to our next page, which is our stations page that we had finished. And we'll just go through all of our ERB files here and do the same replacement of ID with class and fix up our toolbars. Do this on our edit page. Well, actually, if you remember, we didn't use edit in our application, so we're actually going to just delete that page. So we'll just remove those files. Our entering page, we need to do the same replacement. Save that. Our index page, we're going to do the same replacement and make sure that any JavaScript that we had done before is still checked. Save that again. Go back to our routes. Now this is the special page that I had in mind when I was thinking about it earlier here. What we need to do is replace our IDs here with classes. Close that and save the page. So I'm going to take a minute to answer some of the questions here that have been posted. One person asked, sometimes IDs are necessary. Is every single view loaded essentially on the same page? So yes, the way that the transition framework works and the way that JQ Touch worked originally is that when you loaded the page, what happens is all of them are loaded into the same page and they're loaded into separate divs on that page. There were some conflicts with the way we did it, so we changed that slightly, but it is essentially the same of each of your pages is loaded into the same page on the screen into a separate div. So you can use IDs, but you have to remember that all of your IDs need to not have conflicts. So what happens is you need to just make sure that you have your IDs different. So one good example is this routes ERB, which showed the route of all the different stations. And we were using an ID here, actually got changed to class, but we're using an ID to mark this div where the routes are. But because it's loading in the same page, when we do the next station, the routes will be using the same IDs of the old stuff, which is hidden. So what we need to do is make these IDs unique for this specific view. And we can do that by putting in the station address, or the station abbreviation. So our ID now is going to be the station abbreviation route, which now makes these IDs unique across the application. And so we'll change our toggle here as well, which is JavaScript. So before it had route 1, route 2, route 3, now it will have the station, for example, 12th route 1 or 12th route 2. So we can still use IDs. You just need to keep in mind that the IDs are going to be across the entire application. And the reason why you have to change all the divs is because we had all of them set to content here. And so if you had a whole bunch of IDs with content, then you would have conflicts. And so another person asks is, how do the transitions work? So it is basically doing AJAX requests to your ERB pages and loading them into separate divs and then transitioning between those divs. And we have done slight tweaks to the framework so that it is transparent to you that this is happening. So the only thing you have to keep in mind is that your IDs cannot be the same across any of your pages. So we'll go ahead and save that and continue modifying our ERB pages. There's actually just one more to do. So we'll do our search and replace here. Verify that we're not using the IDs here. So the final thing that we need to keep in mind in our application, since we did a bunch of these style overrides need to be changed a little bit. Because we were specifying by ID, we need to now change that to be specified by class. And that's done by changing the hashes here to dots. So we'll go ahead and fix that up in our ERBs before we run the application.